Well, I say that I come on here today just to tell a little bit more about the carving of these nativity figures. Before I proceed, there's a little thing I need to mention about my knives. These knives are getting old. I will tell you that. They are getting old. So it's coming to the point where sooner or later they're probably going to need to be replaced because it's getting to the point where I was trying to carve something else with them this morning and they are kind of getting to be a struggle to carve with. And sharpen them like I'm supposed to. They get pretty sharp, but I do think the blades are kind of thinning. So that kind of happens when you've been using them for years and been sharpening them over and over again for years, and I've heard a lot about that, how it is. And one little thing I want to mention is that Calvin Grant is no longer around for us to ask advice from. He's in heaven now, and thankfully he's up there enjoying it. But when he was here on earth, I would always ask him a lot of questions about these knives because, there was just a lot I needed to know, a lot I wanted to know. And one thing I learned from him was that when the blade starts getting real thin like that, you can't really use it to carve hard woods anymore. You kind of have to use it just to do little details and just to kind of carve softer woods and things like that. Butternut is a fairly soft wood, so since that's what we're carving from today, that it'll probably be good enough for that. But here's what I want to show is that I've done it with both Marys and both Josephs, but I'll show it with one of each. I have put these little lines in along where the robe goes and where it meets. So that's the part that I have been working on lately. But there's a certain step to all of these we will focus on today. That is where you see these little lines I've drawn across the corners and a place where you kind of shave along on the back of the head here to kind of make it a little flatter. So we're going to put our work into that today. That's going to be our focus of the project today. That's the work, how it's going to go, work, how it's going to do. It's going to be a little place in our lives where we make a lot of lasting work for us. It will be a time when we'll work along to things, work along with what we do, work along with what we know. And I just got little stories to share while I'm going about this. I'd like to mention when I was in the Starbucks the other night, there was this girl, I don't know how old she is, but she's a senior in high school, which means you could probably guess about her age, but her boyfriend sent her a text message that said, "Howdy doody." And she didn't know what it meant. Some of those girls in there working with her didn't know what it meant. I will say anyway about that particular location that there are guys there who work during the daytime, but only girls work at night, and so that's all I see because I am only there at night. And of course they had their little conversation behind the counter about that, and as far as how that went, I kind of asked them the question, did you all know that Howdy Doody is a puppet? So they were kind of cutting up at first and didn't really hear me, but when one of them came over to the table to kind of sit down and take her break, I asked her if she knew that. And so, they have these little microphone headsets that they talk to each other on, and that girl who I said that to, she said into her microphone headset, Jonathan said that Howdy Doody is a puppet. They were kind of interested to learn about this, and the thing is, I told them a little more. Of course, I'd say I wasn't born until 1980, and this was in the 50s, so it was before my time, but my parents told me a lot about it when I was a kid. I even told them all of this, but the first time I got introduced to him, I was like in the 80s when I was a kid and looking at a Sears catalog, and when I saw in the Sears catalog there was a puppet like him that had that name. That was when I first found out who he was. And funny little thing is, I wanted that puppet, but it was too expensive for you to get for a kid as a toy. So I got another one, but that was a whole different story. But I've told them about how one thing my parents told me as a kid, that he came on TV and said his own name. He opened up the commercial saying "Howdy Doody," and that was just another way of saying "How do you do?" So that was kind of how that worked. One of the girls I was telling that to, she said, "I don't know much about the 50s. Of course, this girl, you know, for her age, she probably wasn't born until 1997 was what she told me. She's still very young." And so when, you know, when I heard all this and I told her, I said, well, I wasn't around yet then either. I said, but my parents were born in the 50s and they told me a lot about it when I was a kid. So we come to note the little things we see and share in life and the things we come to the understanding of. I do need to say that this little carving is sort of coming along. I'm getting the best I can get into this piece of work, but there are times when you have to sharpen up several knives at once so that you can alternate knives during your work. It seems like it's coming to the point where that's about what I might be having to do right now. So I got another one that gets pretty sharp because they get dull when you're working with them, so you kind of have to move along and do a little more work here and there. I'd say there was so much I learned in life, and I tell you, see, I know so much because I'm old and I've experienced so much, but I'm around these young people and sometimes they tell me about things that they heard from their customers and about certain types of apps I hear about. I do little Google researches to find out a little more about these apps, and sometimes from what I discover in the apps, it'll just so happen that when I'll see them, you know, I've just gotten to where I've just learned how to kind of tell whether an app is trusted or not. I've had some bad experiences with apps that weren't trusted that I've downloaded to my computer before. I've had little experiences like that with little add-ons and plugins that I have added to my Firefox and my Google Chrome at times. I don't fool with all that phone app stuff. I'm rather old-fashioned. I like to do everything the old school way. So that's how I learned about that. But I would also like to say it was kind of like how it was when we were in Drake's, that little restaurant that's over there in Nicholasville. Haven't told you all much about it because I haven't been coming on here to do videos for the time during the summer that I was going there to eat a lot in the evenings after going to Starbucks to hang out at night. And I'd say for all the trips I've taken, all the things I've learned from the places I've been, there's this new little handheld device that the servers carry around where on that device, you know, that's what you pay with now. They don't give you paper receipts anymore. There's a few things about it which I know makes it kind of more complicated to do. I didn't like it. I mean, some of the young servers might be okay with it, but there are those of us who are older, and even some of those servers I talk to who may even be a little closer to my own age, to that matter, I say, they always kind of said the same things. They said they always preferred to do it the old school way. So I'd sometimes talk about that thing and say, to heck with that thing. Because I tell you, I always thought it was a piece of junk when they came out with it. We did one Mary here. Now we're going to do a Joseph. But I think we're going to probably not try to do all four on this video because that might make it a little too long. Seems like we are taking our time a long way with it and probably got quite a long way to go. Some of y'all, if you ever get online and you follow Sarah Listy from Tool Girls Garage, I'd like to mention the fact that she's been co-hosting a show called Murder Flip House. She's a woodworker and a carpenter and all, so she did some of the shows. She kind of did some of the wood and work and carpentry on some of the houses that were among the ones where the stories on that show took place. So she kind of co-hosts the season 2, which is the season that is on Roku right now. I've watched one episode already. I even told her I didn't think shows like that were really my cup of tea, but I say, I sort of watched it for her, so it was all good. We've had our correspondences on there in the past, and if you ever go to her Instagram account, look her up, or go to her Facebook page, you can learn a lot about her, There's a lot of things that without her permission, I wouldn't share to any of my platforms, but I'm sure that if she shares it to hers, she'd probably be happy for you to read it or hear it or see it. So, I say a little work comes a long way, and we make little things come out of here. There's a lot of time and work going into this thing, and there's a lot to know, a lot to hear, a lot to say, a lot to do. I tell y'all that, as you can see, I'm creating a lot of little wooden chips. Sometimes there's all this caution to take about that because I can only hope for all I do. I don't get these chips in my nose and get them in my sinuses. Sometimes it can be bad enough that dust can do that, but when it kind of happens with these little chips, it can be even worse. I mean, I even heard a story on the news. This was a story years ago. Don't remember who the man was or what his name was or exactly what, but he was a carpenter and he was kind of building a house and he was working with a nail gun, and then he kind of felt something in his sinus cavity, for which he had to go to the hospital and get an x-ray to see what it was, and he had a nail in his sinus cavity that had to be surgically removed. And from his experience, you'd probably say what he learned was to use a hammer. That was at least his story from that time on. He decided he would always just use a hammer because from his experience, the nail gun just somehow got the nail in the wrong place. I mean, but all these stories we hear, all these things we hear, and it's kind of like some of the stories I've been telling to people at Starbucks lately. There's this girl I've been talking to there. We kind of got to telling the stories about those little sewing needles I take in there to sew my stuffed animals and pillows with while I'm sitting in there. And I've kind of talked about what some of my concerns are about them falling out and getting lost in there. She told me she felt bad she had to sweep one up because she thinks they're like $5 a pack. I told her I think I get mine for less than that. But, you know, when we kind of got to talking about little accidents that can happen with those nails, among the things I mentioned is how something similar can happen with grill brushes. There's been stories about people who were cleaning their outdoor grill with a wire brush, and I've heard stories about how the wire brush bristle kind of comes off in the grill and then it goes into the food while you're cooking, and heard a story about somebody who ate one of those and had the bristle get stuck in his mouth, had to get it surgically removed. But they say there's been other stories about people who that kind of thing has happened to, and that sometimes it was done in a way that it couldn't be removed, not even surgically, and some people just lived with the discomfort. I say these stories, you know, they're probably a lot to share, a lot to tell, a lot to say, but I'd say as I come along on this, there's little things I'm going to share, say, and do, but I will say that little legit articles can take place in life. They all happen in the most mysterious ways, but I'd say that we've already done one head of Mary and one head of Joseph here. I think we kind of got it all done for right now. Finally get to finish this video now. I will show you all how they came out. Finally, you can see it here at the top. You can see it from the front. You can see it from the back. I forgot to tell you that much, but that's how it goes. And hope you do well. Take care, and we'll see you in the next video.